Yo, what is good people, Ben from Lover of Tech, and we are back with another video. This time, camera comparison. Nothing Phone 2a versus the iPhone 15 versus the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro. Now, again, how much do you need to spend to really benefit from a base model flagship when it comes to the camera? Well, let's test it out with this camera comparison. So, we're going to test everything from daylight, low light, front facing cameras and rear cameras, and really see how they perform when it comes to photos and videos. So let's get into the camera specs and then back into the main camera comparison. Now, the camera specs for the Nothing Phone 2a, the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro, and the iPhone 15 will be linked in the description below. Now, the best way to watch this camera comparison is at the highest resolution in 4K 60 with headphones on the largest display possible, so you can hear the audio differences at the video section when you're watching it through. First section of this camera comparison is going to be focused on video, and the second half is going to be on pictures. So yeah, this is a definitive one, so sit back, relax, and enjoy it. We are now recording on the front-facing camera on the Nothing Phone 2a, iPhone 15, and the Redmi Note 13 Pro. Now, with the Redmi and the Nothing Phone, they are limited to 1080p 30 at the moment, 4K 30 on the iPhone 15, tested the image quality, stabilization, dynamic range. Quick run. We're still recording on the front-facing camera on Nothing Phone 2a, iPhone 15, and the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro. Now, we do have a 60 FPS option on the Nothing Phone 2a, but it's limited to 1080p, and then there's 4K 60 on the iPhone 15, whereas on the Xiaomi, it's still limited to 1080p 30. Quick run. One benefit you do get with the iPhone 15 is that you are able to record the cinematic background blur on the front-facing camera. It's up to 4K 30, and you do have the ability to change the blur positioning and intensity in the edit. And this is, again, a benefit of actually going for a base model flagship. You do get these extra features and image quality when it comes to video recording. We are now recording in the 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode on the Nothing Phone 2a, iPhone 15, and the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro. On the main rear camera sensor, just to see how the image quality is like, and stabilization. Quick run. We've now switched to the ultra-wide angle lens on the Nothing Phone 2a, iPhone 15, as well as the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro. Now, the benefit you do get with the iPhone 15 and the Nothing Phone 2a is that you still are able to record in 4K 30 on the ultra-wide, whereas the ultra-wide on the Xiaomi is limited to 1080p 30. Still a quick run. Again, one benefit you get with the iPhone 15 is you don't need to stop recording to switch lenses. You can go from 1x to the ultra wide all on the same clip, whereas you do have to pause recording on the Nothing Phone and also on the Xiaomi. Still in 4K UHD 30 frames per second, but we've now switched to the 2x digital crop mode. And just seeing how they handle in this particular mode. Hold steady. We're now in the 60 FPS recorder mode on the Nothing Phone 2a, iPhone 15, and the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro. Again, with the Xiaomi and the Nothing Phone, they are limited to 1080p, whereas on the iPhone, you can shoot this in 4K 60 and switch between the lenses on the fly. Quick run. We're still in a 60 FPS video recorder mode on the Nothing Phone 2a and the iPhone 15. Now, with the iPhone 15, it is still recording in 4K 60 as demonstrated before. We're still in 1080p 60 on the Nothing Phone 2a, but for the ultra wide on the Xiaomi, it is limited to just 1080p 30 only. Quick run. Still in the 60 FPS video recorder mode on the Nothing Phone 2a iPhone 15, and now the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro, just in a 2x mode. You see how they hold up. Steady walk. We are now on the 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode on the rear main camera sensors on the Nothing Phone 2A, the iPhone 15 and the Redmi Note 13 Pro. I'm just seeing how the image quality is like with me in the frame as the subject. It's going to do a slow walk. Stop. Still in the 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode on the Nothing Phone 2A, iPhone 15 and the Redmi Note 13 Pro. We're now on the ultra-wide. Now actually, with the Redmi Note 13 Pro, the ultra-wide is limited to 1080p 30 FPS and not 4K, where you do get 4K video recording on the Nothing Phone 2A and the iPhone 15 on the ultra-wide. It's going to do a slow step back. And stop. So we're now in the 2x recording mode, digital crop zoom on the main wide sensor, 4K 30, Nothing Phone 2A, iPhone 15, and also the Redmi Note 13 Pro. I'm just seeing how the image quality is like with me in the frame as a subject. It's an overcast day today, so yeah, not much sun to really test dynamic range. Now here's one of the benefits of actually moving up to even a base model flagship phone. Video portrait mode, cinematic background blur effect. This is only available on the iPhone 15. It does shoot all the way up to 4K 30 FPS, whereas the other mid-range phones, you just will not get this feature. The processing power is not there, and the camera sensors are just not really capable, but it's really down to the processing power. This is the benefit of moving up to even a base model flagship phone like the iPhone 15. So we're now in the 60 FPS mode on the Nothing Phone 2A, iPhone 15 and the Redmi Note 13 Pro. Now the difference is that the iPhone allows you to do this in 4K. The others are limited to 1080p. Again, lack of processing power does not allow you to have the option to do 4K 60. You're limited to 1080p 60, and this is on the main wide sensor. 4K 60 on iPhone 15. We've now switched to the ultra-wide recorder mode on the Nothing Phone 2A, iPhone 15 and the Redmi Note 13 Pro. The 4K 60 option is still available on the iPhone 15, but for the Nothing Phone 2A, it goes down to 1080p 60, and for the Redmi Note 13 Pro, it's limited to 1080p 30 on the ultra-wide period. No 60 FPS option at all, not even a 720p option for that, so just something to consider if that's what matters to you. So still in a 60 FPS video recorder mode, Nothing Phone 2A, iPhone 15, Redmi Note 13 Pro. Again, in the 2X mode, 60 FPS is limited to 1080p on the Redmi as well as the Nothing Phone. Whereas the iPhone 15, you can still do this in 4K 60. Again, the benefits of having a base model flagship phone when it comes to the camera. We're now recording in the 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode on the rear cameras on the Nothing Phone 2A, iPhone 15 and the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro. We're starting on the main wide sensor. We're on a 30 FPS video recorder mode, Nothing Phone 2A, iPhone 15 and the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro. Now on the ultra wide, the iPhone does allow you to do it in 4K. Same with the Nothing Phone 2A, where you do have to stop recording and then continue on a new video clip. And the Xiaomi is limited to 1080p. Again, you can switch 1, 2 and go to the ultra wide. That's the benefit that you have here. We're now recording on a front-facing camera on the Nothing Phone 2A, iPhone 15 and the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro. This is in the 30 FPS mode. Again, with the Xiaomi and the Nothing Phone, they are limited to 1080p, whereas the iPhone, you do have the ability to record this in 4K. When I'm recording in a 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode, on a rear camera on the Nothing Phone 2a, iPhone 15, and the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro. Again, we're just sticking to the main wide sensor and just seeing how the difference is in the low light performance between these mid-range devices up to this base model flagship phone from the iPhone. Okay, after going through videos, let's now look at the pictures and analyze them between the Nothing Phone 2a, iPhone 15, and the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro. And we're going to start with the landscape shots first. And again, if I'm going too fast, definitely feel free to pause and have a look and analyze these pictures to the best of your ability and pretty much take it in as much as you can. I'm going to make this as quick fire as possible, so of course the video is not as long as it needs to be. Now, starting with the ultra wide, you can see that automatically you do gravitate to the Nothing Phone 2a. I'm definitely going to say that the iPhone 15 is definitely more accurate to how the day looked. It was a very overcast, dark and gloomy day, typical of UK at this time of year. Bring on summer and please bring on spring with the longer days. But anyway, as we move on and see that in terms of the accuracy and detail that you're getting on the iPhone 15 is definitely more accurate to the day. The Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro is slightly more underexposed in that sense, but again, I don't blame it just because of how it is. Detail is a lot lower because of the resolution being only 8 megapixels, but I do like the detail that you're getting from the Nothing Phone 2a, and in some ways it is a preference how it's exposed it. It's really good, a bit more on the saturated side, but yeah, I'm liking it. Now when we move over to the 1X, you can see that things actually move up in terms of the saturation for what you're seeing on the iPhone 15. So that's very interesting. Now the main camera sensor on the Nothing Phone 2a, it's a bit more toned down and it's a bit more realistic to the tone of the day. Things stay more consistent with the Redmi Note 13 Pro, but it's great detail on the iPhone 15. Again, when there's enough light during the day, the iPhone 15 generation this time around is pretty much been into 24 megapixels in JPEG. In nighttime, it's 12 megapixels. You can't shoot 24 at night, but yeah, it adds to the extra detail. And you're seeing that also there with the fine grass details on the Nothing Phone 2a, as well as what you're seeing on the Redmi Note 13 Pro. Moving into the 2X mode, again, this is doing a digital crop. None of these phones have a dedicated zoom lens, so just take that into consideration. And I would say the image processing across all of them is actually not bad. I think the exposure and how it looks on iPhone 15 might be better considered. The Nothing Phone 2a balances it well. Again, the Redmi Note 13 Pro has stayed consistent all the way through. It's slightly darker than it was as how the day was looking, but yeah, take that into what you can with which one you prefer. Now, there is a 4X mode on the Redmi Note 13 Pro. That's probably just down to the fact that it's working with a 200 megapixel sensor. I think the pixel size is 0.15 or 0.56 micrometers. So it's very small pixels to begin with, but I guess it can overcompensate going as 4X, so we lined them all up at 4X to really see how they performed. The Redmi Note 13 Pro is not doing bad, but again, the exposure is a bit low than I would like. The iPhone 15 is definitely holding up okay, and the image does become a lot softer on the Nothing Phone 2a. Now, in the maximum extended zoom mode, again, I just did this for funsies, 10X. You can probably say, apart from the color shifting and a moire around the yellow gate on the Redmi Note 13 Pro, it's probably the one that holds up best than the iPhone 15, or it might be iPhone 15 and the Redmi. Let me know in the comment section below which one you prefer. And the one that falls apart the most is an Nothing Phone 2a, but honestly, don't get these phones for crazy extended zoom. That's not what they're for. This is just for consistency of what I usually do in my camera tests. Now, for the high resolution mode in JPEG, for the Nothing Phone 2a, you can do that in 50 megapixels. The Redmi Note 13 Pro is straight 200 megapixels. There isn't a 50 megapixel mode. And then of course the iPhone 15 for the main wide sensor is 48 megapixels. Again, this is a situation where you need a lot more light. I think even on an overcast day like this, it's not really preferred to be doing this mode. But again, I wanted to show it, and yeah, I will do additional crops at 200% and 300%, so you can pretty much see the difference between the three. Now
Now, when we go into the ultra wide mode, the only one with a high resolution sensor is the Nothing Phone 2a. So you can do 50 megapixels on the ultra wide, which is great to see. Whereas the iPhone 15 is 12 megapixels and the Redmi Note 13 Pro is standard 8 megapixels. Now let's take some front facing camera shots with the selfies on the Nothing Phone 2a, iPhone 15 and the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro. Man, Xiaomi, that name is a mouthful. And I would say in this particular situation, I would say the overall look of the iPhone 15 is probably the one that's preferred, but I'll be honest with you, it probably has maybe slightly darker than what I'm used to. Again, you got to remember with iPhones that you do have different photographic styles that you can pick where it pre-changes the processing for how it does, but for the default mode, yeah, I would say this is one that's preferred. In some ways, I like the look of the Redmi Note 13 Pro, but it probably does red my skin a little bit. Whereas the Nothing Phone 2a probably strikes a good balance between the two, but it lacks that kind of contrast that gives it style. But again, that's just my personal analysis and preference. Now, when we go into portrait mode, one thing you have to remember is with the iPhone, if you go into portrait mode, it crops in and you lose field of view, and it does produce a slightly lower resolution image. So personally, just take a normal picture, go in the edit, change it to portrait mode. And that's what I prefer. But overall, in terms of the edge detection, all have done great overall in this case, but I would say the Nothing Phone 2 is done best. If you look at, you know, the side of my cheek, it does miss it a bit on the iPhone 15, but again, it's just a hit and miss here and there. Now, last set of daylight images with the rear camera with me in the frame as the subject. And again, we're gonna start with the ultra wide. And in this particular situation, the environment around me as the subject is probably a lot more realistic on the iPhone 15 with the ultra wide. But if we're gonna focus on me as the subject, again, it does underexpose the shadows and it does make me look darker than I really am. I would say the one that strikes a good balance with me and the subject is definitely probably going to be the Nothing Phone 2a. It probably oversaturates the color of my jacket a bit more than it should, and the Redmi Note 13 Pro actually does well with decent dynamic range, but the image does look softer than expected, which is again 8 megapixels. Moving over to the main 1x wide sensor, again things stay a bit more consistent like before. Again, it is better exposed on the iPhone 15 now, so I would probably give that the overall win. Whereas if you look at the detail on the Redmi Note 13 Pro, it's still not really there in terms of the processing. Whereas the Nothing Phone 2a in this situation does really well with me in the frame as a subject. Again, the environment is a bit more saturated than it should, but me as the main subject, I think it does well. It misses it a bit in terms of the color processing. That's more accurate on the iPhone, so just take that into consideration. In the 2x mode, again, stays consistent. The detail across all three, it's actually surprisingly really good, which is one thing I love to see. But I think in terms of the image processing, it's very much consistently the same. So yeah, nothing really changes in that sense. Now into the 4x mode, really just to match up to what we're getting on the Redmi Note 13 Pro, or else we wouldn't really be doing it. In this situation, the Nothing Phone 2a really does fall apart and it does struggle. It is down to the Redmi and the iPhone 15. Again, the Redmi in terms of skin toning, there is more of like a slight reddish and magenta hue on my skin that I don't really like. And although the iPhone 15 does darken my skin more than I prefer, it is the one I'm going to be going for, especially for the fact that the color processing on my jacket is a lot more accurate rather than the other two, which is kind of making them blue. Portrait mode on the main wide sensor to start with, and again, the iPhone really just nails it. I've always said it, what Apple have done in terms of the more natural, gradual look of background bokeh blur is something they've really nailed. And again, the gaps in between my arm, that's why I pose that way, is nailed perfectly. Again, the Nothing Phone 2a nails it really good. And actually in terms of retaining good dynamic range, yeah, again, really, really well done. And the Redmi Note 13 Pro, not bad. Again, lacks detail, but really for focusing on the edge detection and blur effect and accuracy and cutout, yeah, it's done well. So I'm pleased with that. Now, the Redmi Note 13 Pro doesn't have a 2x mode for the portrait mode, which, you know, kind of strange. It should really have that there. But yeah, the other two do. And again, the dynamic range on the Nothing Phone 2 it really reduces, so it loses it there. But again, focusing on the blur and the cutout effect, it still does well. Whereas with the iPhone 15, it definitely walks away with it. Again, demonstrating a high resolution mode on the main wide sensor, 48 megapixels on the iPhone 15, 50 megapixels megapixels on the Nothing Phone 2a and 200 megapixels on the Redmi Note 13 Pro. Just pretty much seen that, in all fairness, they all hold up not so bad, but again, I'll say the image processing, especially around my head, is not really that great on the Redmi. And then into the ultra wide, again, the only one that's available in high resolution mode is 50 megapixels on Nothing Phone 2a, so I've got to give it credit for the extra flexibility there. Good luck on this one, Nothing, you did well. Let's turn off the lights and look at some low light images between the Nothing Phone 2a, iPhone 15 and the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro. Now, I'm gonna pretty much put this and say that the Nothing Phone 2a, out of all three of these devices, does not have a dedicated separate night mode. And what I suspect is that when you're in photo mode, it shows the moon icon to be able to disable night mode and enable it. To be honest, I don't think it does anything. I'm just putting that out there because what you're gonna see is that taking the shots without night mode first and then turning night mode on, there isn't really any difference in there. And again, if it's your first time here that you've come to see my camera comparisons, the reason why I do without night mode first and then night mode after is without night mode gives you the fastest capturing experience, whereas night mode, it does take longer and it might not always necessarily be the best. And of course, I will use flash where it's applicable. Now, starting with the ultra wide, obviously by clear exposure, you're gonna see that the Nothing Phone 2a is winning, but honestly, I personally say discount it for this particular round until you get to the night mode, then you'll really see it. But between the two, it would be the iPhone 15 when it comes to detail, but again, in terms of exposure, the Redmi Note 13 Pro is probably doing better. Now we'll move over to the main 1x sensor. Again, of course, the exposure is going to be better. The Nothing Phone 2a is suffering from this light flare and magenta hue on the street lights, and that's not something I really like, whereas obviously the iPhone 15 doesn't have that problem. Detail's really good on there, and the Redmi Note 13 Pro is actually holding up really well. Now in the 2x mode, yes, things improve a little bit better on the Nothing Phone 2a, great detail on the sign. Again, I'll definitely say the iPhone 15 then the Redmi Note 13 Pro, just because of how it manages the light around the street lights. Of course, the detail and the exposure especially is still doing okay good on the Nothing Phone 2a. And a 4x mode, here in this particular situation, I would actually give it to the Redmi Note 13 Pro, then followed by the Nothing Phone 2a, and then the iPhone 15, because the iPhone 15 does produce a lot of noise. Again, this is more to match up to the 4x mode on the Redmi. Now, let's run it back again. Night mode active. Now you can see the biggest improvement to night mode is going to be the iPhone 15. It does improve a bit on the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro, but not really by much way significant. But yeah, it's a night and day difference with the iPhone 15. With the ultra wide, definitely use night mode. And as you can see with the Nothing Phone 2a, it's no different to when night mode was off. Now moving over to the main wide sensor. Again, the image processing cleans up really well on the iPhone 15. It's slightly better on the Redmi Note 13 Pro, but then it does cast a little bit of a magenta hue from the street lights, which I don't really like. And this is something that's synonymous on the Nothing Phone 2a. So I hope Nothing, you look into this to give this an update to fix this. And in the 2x mode, again, I would say that the Redmi Note 13 Pro is actually holding up a lot better than I was expecting. I'll probably give it to that. And then the Nothing Phone 2a, then the iPhone 15. Now in the 4x mode, pretty much the improvement goes in the order of still being on a Redmi, then the iPhone 15, then the Nothing Phone 2a, but all of them in terms of exposure have really improved with night mode. Now with the front facing camera with night mode off, then night mode on, and flash where applicable, it was kind of a pleasant surprise. I feel like these mid-range phones really held up well. Now without night mode, low light on the front facing camera on iPhones really struggle overall. And in this particular situation, although there is lack of detail, I like the exposure on the Nothing Phone 2a, whereas the detail on the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro is actually the best at the cost of a slightly lower exposure, whereas it's just too much noise on the iPhone 15. Now night mode really brings things back for the iPhone 15. It is the best looking one out of all of them. So if you're doing selfie in low light, definitely you want to be using night mode with the iPhone 15. Now with the front screen flash, I'll definitely give that to the Redmi Note 13 Pro, then the Nothing Phone 2a. I think they're even in their own way, but I just like the look of my skin on the Redmi. And then the iPhone 15, it really just struggles in overcast and just produces this weird hue and noise in the image. Now, portrait mode on the low light selfie without night mode active. Actually, all of them do not have night mode ability on the selfie with portrait mode. But in this particular situation, yeah, so all of them struggle in some way, and it's hard to pick. I will definitely probably pick the Nothing Phone 2a more just because of exposure, so you can see more of the blur, but all of them do blur and, you know, activate through. Now with the front screen flash active, yeah, I will definitely give this one It's a tough one, but I'm gonna go with the Redmi Note 13 Pro just because of the way it renders my skin, then the Nothing Phone 2a, and then of course the iPhone 15. Last set of low light images with the rear camera with me in the frame as the subject. Again, like I said, this first round without night mode active, in inverted commas. Discount the Nothing Phone 2a because I don't think it really disables night mode, even though the toggle's there on the main camera sensor. I personally think Nothing create a separate dedicated night mode and allow us to turn it off, just because if we want the fastest capture speed without night mode, it's going to be the best way to capture it. Now with the ultra wide, definitely in this situation, it's a struggle on all of them, but again, I wouldn't count the Nothing Phone 2a even though the exposure is looking the best. Moving over to the main wide sensor, the iPhone 15 definitely claws it back, looks the best out of the three. Now of course the Nothing Phone 2a is looking great, but again, just consider it without night mode for now before we get to the night mode section. And then 2x mode, all of them really fall apart, but actually the one that holds up best at the cost of a lower exposure is the Redmi Note 13 Pro, so I'm definitely liking the look of that. And in the 4x mode, yeah, both the iPhone and Nothing Phone 2a definitely fall apart. It looks like with the Redmi Note 13 Pro, even though it does come at the cost of a lower exposure, it is a bit more detailed, so I do like the look of that. Now let's look at it at more even terms with night mode active across the board. You can see there's no difference between when night mode was on and off with the Nothing Phone 2a. iPhone 15 100% improves the best, becomes the best looking one out of all of them. Slightly soft in this particular shot, but generally speaking, it is the one that you're going to be using night mode and see the biggest improvement. Now moving over to the main 1x sensor. Yep, again, the iPhone really matches up well, but actually, I'll tell you what, trading blows is the Redmi Note 13 Pro. In this particular situation, I don't think you can go wrong with any of them. I do like the white balancing on the Nothing Phone 2a, so I would, consider that as well. But honestly, with all three, can't go wrong. 2x mode, you see a big improvement for the iPhone and one that matches up well. The Redmi Note 13 Pro is really throwing it down. The image is a bit softer than the Nothing Phone 2a, so just take that into consideration. And then when it comes to the final image, I'm giving this one to the Redmi Note 13 Pro. It's looking a lot better compared to the others that are much soft. So it looks like the 4x mode really benefits the Redmi Note 13 Pro. Now, flash active starting with the ultra wide. And in this particular situation, although the power of the flash is very favored on the iPhone 15, in some ways, I like the stylistic look of the Redmi Note 13 Pro, whereas the Nothing Phone 2a allows you to see the environment around you and still use the flash on the subject. So in some ways, I would say most people will probably go for the Nothing Phone 2a so you can see the environment. I like the stylistic look of the iPhone 13 Pro. And in this situation, although the flash on the 15 is more powerful, it's a bit overbearing and it lacks a bit of style in my opinion. Now, moving over to the main wide sensor, again, it stays consistent. I like the stylistic look of the Redmi. I think most people will pick the Nothing Phone 2a as it balances the back environment, your surrounding environment with you in the frame as the subject, whereas the iPhone 15 is quite powerful, but again, that might be preferred, especially if you're doing group shots. Now moving over to 2x, again, stays consistent, but the iPhone image does become softer, so I'm gonna go personally with the Xiaomi, then the Nothing Phone 2a, then the iPhone 15, and a 4x is gonna be the same. Again, the Xiaomi for this particular one, then the Nothing Phone 2a, and the iPhone 15, but again, Nothing Phone 2 and iPhone 15 is kind of just a here and there. Portrait mode in low lights. So in this particular situation, I think all of them did really good. Which one do I prefer? I actually really like the look of the Nothing Phone 2a, especially with the exposure. It's done the cut out really well. Then the iPhone 15 and the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro. But actually, you know what? I've got to give it to all three. They really pulled through well. Now, 2x mode in this particular situation is really between the Nothing and the iPhone 15. There isn't a 2x portrait mode on the Xiaomi, so take that into consideration. And in some ways, yeah, it's going to be the Nothing Phone 2a because the 2x portrait mode on the iPhone 15, it really doesn't activate and it's such a hit and miss. And in this particular situation, it was more of a miss. Now, let's put the flash on, and this is something you can do on the iPhone 15 with portrait mode and flash together. You can't do it with night mode. I think that's for the Pro and the Pro Max. In this particular situation, of course, you got to give it to the iPhone. It allows you to do that, so it wins here. And that's also in the 2x zoom mode. It wins here because it actually allows you to use the flash and portrait mode together for the rear camera. Now, how close did you think these mid-range phones with the Nothing Phone 2a and the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro got to the base model flagship that Apple are offering this year with the iPhone 15? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. That's it for me, Ben from Lover of Tech. If you enjoy videos like this, you know exactly what to do. Hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you're part of Team TLS, the Tech Lover Squad, so you don't miss any future videos on the channel. I hope you're all safe during this time. I will catch you in the next one. Peace.